Hey there, everybody. It's Andy with My Side of the Fence podcast. I am here with Council Member Tom Osina.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in, man.
Well, very much appreciate the invite. I'm glad we were able to connect. It took us a while.
It did. Most difficult one so far is Maldonado. She has scheduled twice and canceled twice because she got called to Richmond for some meeting or whatever. I mean, I get it. It's a lot.
Well, it is, and everyone's got a personal life they got to live too.
Yeah.
Along the way here.
Yeah, I don't know how people how in the world do you make time to go to Richmond for almost 2 straight months?
Well, there's that. And then they're on these committees or these special study committees, and they go down for, let's say, a day. And it isn't necessarily in Richmond if they're having hearings in a different part of the state.
That's right.
And if they have to travel past, to like Abington, that's a lot of miles. Yes, indeed. Especially in return for what they get paid, along the way.
$30,000 a year or something?
18
whole $1,000.
That's right. There you go. There. So pay raise, right? I don't know if I should say that word, but that's okay.
So I don't, you and I have met before.
Yes,
we've chatted a couple of times, but, what's your background? Like, where did you grow up? Where did you come from?
Well, good question here. You're right. Manassas has now grown to the point where a lot of people who live here don't necessarily were people who were born here.
Right.
For instance, at a ribbon cutting today, Mayor Davis was talking about what was over there at the old Marsteller school there, and we were cutting a ribbon for the community center, and she was talking about having gone to school there. And then we were going over to Prince William Hospital. UVA Health had a new renovated mammogram coach there. And she was talking about having been born at that hospital.
Same.
And so, well, there you go. So But there are a lot of people, myself included, that Manassas wasn't our original home here along the way. I tell people that I did a lot of different jobs to find out what it was that I didn't want to do along the way here, but I did have kind of an interesting career. I grew up outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, in Albemarle County, and so I did the whole thing. I did elementary school, it was junior high back then, and middle school, and then we had high school, and then I went to UVA. And they had a very good game this past Saturday.
They did.
Friday against Florida State there.
Surprising.
So poor Patrick Small is kind of sad because he went there and, what the heck.
He's a big boy.
That's right. He can handle that along the way. And I've done several different things career-wise. I was a English teacher for a few years here. I earned the grand total of $9,000, of which I had to pay for my own health insurance out of $9,000.
Man.
Yeah, talk about that. And living expenses.
Well, yeah.
All that sort of thing. But I was also a radio DJ back when vinyl was the way you played music there at a small radio station. And then from there, I went to work for the Virginia Radio Network at WINA out of Charlottesville and did news there. And I like that job. I think of all the jobs I've done, that's the one of the jobs I like the most because I could legitimately come up and nose into everybody's business by asking you questions. I'd say, Andy, what about this? What about that? And so forth. So you become an expert about a lot of things, but master of none there. But it was very interesting because it was really gave me my introduction to government and how it works, because the way, news back then, you actually, to get it, you had to go and cover the meetings.
Right.
And just like now, our those meetings were in the evening. Board of Supervisors, school board, a planning commission, and it was several counties that this radio station covered. So you'd go out there and cover these things and then have to produce a story. And so you'd listen to all this stuff, and then you'd go and interview the school board person or the supervisor or city
Right.
councilor or planning commissioner and get what are called actualities, or you get a little tape of them answering a series of questions.
Right.
And you pick the ones that had, the angle that produced the most interest for that story. And then it got played the following morning here. So I got to understand government a lot, and also covering the courts and things like that. One of my best scoops was going to the Charlottesville Circuit Court, and I had made friends with the clerks of the court because, as you know, they're the gatekeepers to so much, and
Right.
they shared. I was just asking if anything new came in, and they pointed to a wire basket that had a bunch of folders and just kind of tapped their fingers at it. And I went over and I opened up the top folder, and in it were these wiretap orders for a local businessman's phones, and then they were going into their safety deposit boxes.
Wow.
And suspicion of cocaine dealing and things of that sort. So you could well imagine that became the morning story.
Sure.
Along the way. So that was fun. And then after that, had the chance to finally get into association work. And I got hired. The first association job I got hired at was the Virginia Funeral Directors Association. So Cliff Blasius was a younger member back then, and got to know him, but covered the whole state. So as you know, the state's pretty big, and I traveled all of it, all the way down to almost Cumberland Gap and all the way to the Eastern Shore. And from that, I did some associations, and then I formed my own company, an association management company, which is where you take associations that can't afford their own captured staff, and you supply headquarters staff, and then you do a variety, almost like a Chinese menu, where they get to choose what services they want. And I've been able to do that since 1994, though totally remote. So if you think back to 1994, a lot of people were not working remotely. If you worked remotely, it was because you were unemployed and, were doing some kind of, I don't want to even call it consulting work along the way. But that's how I got my niche to say I saved you a lot of overhead along the way.
Right.
And got to put 2 kids through college. So it worked very well, and still have the business. But right now I just work with small groups that don't require all my time 100% of the time. But obviously I moved to Manassas when I met my future husband, and I was living in Arlington, and he was living out here, and we met up, and we decided to get together, and I moved in with him.
Oh, cool.
And so that was in 2000. And so
it's been a while.
That's right. So been living in Georgetown South ever since. And I would say, Georgetown South has come a long way. There was a time where even when I was living there, you could look out your front window and you could see a drug deal going on, as a for instance. One time there was this car that all of us in our block noticed hadn't moved for the last 4 or 5 days. So we called the police. They came over, they ran the VIN number, and they found that car had been taken for a test drive from one of the dealers.
Oh, no.
But before that had taken place, it was used for some kind of drug deal somewhere else.
Right.
And then just abandoned there. So, I mean, that gives you a sample of what it was like. And then in the back, there were things, our house has a greenway that it backs up to along the way. So we had Weimaraners, and they would be always barking at night when we'd be sitting out because there were just so many people doing stuff back there.
Right.
But over time, and with Meg Carroll's intervention and becoming the community manager, and then the community, finding its voice there, and got really good about taking responsibility and cleaning a lot of things up. There are times where, there's no question. There are highs and lows along the way here, but infinitely better.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it.
on
It
that.
seems like it.
And being on city council now, helping with the parking situation. I mean,
Right.
for a while it was the Wild West. There was everybody had a parking permit. It seemed to park there, and there were just not enough parking spaces to do that.
Yeah.
But that sounds like parts of the city still at this point here.
There are several parts of the
here.
city that are that way.
So how did you get involved?
Yeah. Well, I was born here. So.
Yes, I know, but how did you get involved with city council?
So I started my business in year 2000,
Mm-hmm.
and I worked for a number of years getting it off the ground. And, in that time I got involved with the Kiwanis Club, and then I served on the Serve Board for a number of years,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Matthews Center, and a couple other places. And I started writing columns for the local paper. Now, this is something you guys don't have to deal with anymore because there's no.
Back when we
Not many-
actually had two papers, didn't we?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. Well, the Washington Post had a staffed bureau in Old Town.
That's right, they did, where the bone was located.
Yeah, and that lady, I cannot remember her name, but man, was she determined. It's like she read everything.
Yeah.
And went to the meetings and paid attention.
Right.
And, I was writing a column, and people were, and back then we really only had the Republican Party.
Yeah.
The reason we only had the Republican Party is because we had some number of Democrats who just ran as Republican.
Okay. Oh, wow.
If they were to run today, they would be Democrats.
Okay.
So it was, and it was, the Republican Party was very much a business kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
governance sort of thing. Vastly different, especially than the National Party is today.
Okay.
And, their primary stance was, fiscal conservatism. They were guys that had a lot of experience, and, they thought the city should be frugal and stuff like that. And, that's fine, whatever. Obviously, there were some people that didn't agree with that because they were actually Democrats or centrist Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of the home for the party back then.
Okay.
And I was writing columns, and I decided, well, I'll go to a Democrat committee meeting, and there were like 5 people there or something, because it just wasn't much energy in that party. And then I was like, well, I'll go to a Republican Party meeting, because I knew everybody that was in the party, and they're all people in Old Town, people that I grew up with.
Sure.
And so I thought, hell, this would be interesting to get into, and the party elders were not thrilled with me, because I had only been running that business for 8 or 10 years, and they thought I was far too conservative.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I always wanted to go back to them, and in the a year or two after that, and say, have you met Mark Avaney? Like, he's the most conservative guy.
Right.
Jackson was on the council,
Yeah.
Jackson Miller, when I was on there. But yeah, that's what I decided to do. And honestly, it was pretty easy to do. I mean, it was a lot of work. The door knocking, and, the fundraising was pretty simple. But we had a couple of campaign events, and I was knocking on doors every day.
Yep.
I had a bit of an advantage in that I'm a nerd. So when I got all the data from Richmond, all the voter data,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to put it into a database and mine it, and only contact the people that were voting regularly in May elections.
I got you.
So I guess I got into it out of a sense of, community involvement. And my parents had never been involved, really.
Sure.
My mom was a volunteer for everything. She volunteered at the museum. She volunteered, I think, early on at the library. I mean, she did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Dad was running businesses and working for the government.
Yeah.
So it was just community involvement, really.
Well, it's funny, you talk about how your parents, especially your mother, volunteered for a lot of different things. And I run across people who talk about how we got the library or the museum as a example, or other things, or the hospital.
Yeah.
These were all sort of civic ventures, weren't they?
100%.
Because there was, back when Manassas was a town, that's how you got stuff. You either pitched in and volunteered your time and your effort, and forming your own, forming the architectural review board or what have you, to kind of, keep things clean.
Yeah.
Nowadays, people look and we see obviously a bigger bureaucracy along the way here, but it's because of those efforts of those folks that we have what we have.
It was very much, it's like the mindset then is, well, we need a library. Okay, well, let's get it started. And today it's, well, we need a library. Okay, well, the city should do something about that.
Right.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just different.
Very, very, very true, in those sorts of things here, which is why when you see some of these volunteer efforts, using the library as an example, when you see a group like the Friends of the Manassas City Library, get together, and they're primarily the fundraising arm to raise funds, so that the library can add additional programs, especially for kids, to that library there. So because government is only paying so much of the freight along the way, and why it's important to have that sort of thing.
If you can keep it, it's a good thing to do. A number of those early institutions were funded by, it was a group effort.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they needed somebody to come in and write a check. And, there were one or two or three of the usual suspects, right? And they put it over the finish line every time.
Well, they did.
And, it's kind of the way it was. This is the way things happened. And then, it's kind of like analogous to like the situation with the volunteer fire department.
Right.
It's almost impossible to be a volunteer.
It is.
The training is just unbelievable. And if you're not a career officer someplace else, it's hard. I mean, if you're a kid and you have the time, right, you can do the training.
Right.
But I can't imagine, like me, owning a business and being a volunteer firefighter with the training requirements. I'm not saying the training requirements are bad, but it's just in our area, it's gotten progressively more difficult.
It has. And that's why we've seen, diminished hours that are being able to be contributed by the volunteers in that regard. It takes almost 18 months to be fully trained, and all of those on top of, if you're a volunteer, who has 18 months? I mean, it's not like being a Boy Scout, Scoutmaster, going once a week, or, a church, doing, church school, once a week, and teaching that sort of thing. You read up the night before, or stuff like that.
Right. It's not
hard on those kinds of things. So one of the things I thought might be interesting to discuss here, it's a little bit about kind of compare how people in the city get involved. And when I say get involved, when you were on council, there would be things that you would do, and you would have public comment time, or you'd be considering doing something, and you'd get comments here along the way here. Nowadays we see, to some degree, a real nobody seems to be listening to each other, and sometimes that filters down locally at times here.
Yeah.
Though I'd like to think that people on city are, on local government, tend to be better about listening, because they see these people every day, or they'll see them, in different places here and so forth. But I do sense a certain amount of frustration, because I hear it at public comment time, for instance, or in emails that from some folks, that they don't feel like they're being listened to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're saying that because clearly their position, their decision, or the idea that they had in mind wasn't adopted by city council there. So what was it like when you were on city council when these things came up?
Like, did we get situations like that?
Well, did you? But more importantly, was it just a constant, you don't listen to us, or was there any constant, or was it more issue, related to the issue? If it was an issue that they had, clearly every year you're going to have people on both sides of the budget question here on what you're doing there, as an example. But did you find that you had people who just, you could see their frustration, and because the way they are looking at what government should be doing is not what, when you were on council, your council was doing?
We did, but not as frequently as I think you guys are seeing it. And there's a very practical reason for that. Because the first several years of my term, we got some of that stuff. There were some developments that we were voting on, things like that. But then, the Great Recession was what, 2008?
Right.
And that really precluded the city from doing much of anything. I mean, hell, we closed down the Parks and Rec department.
Yes.
We almost closed the museum. There was no money. We were laying off police officers. And, people weren't wild about that, but as it was a national event, everybody understood what that meant, right? So we got a lot less of it. And the 2 years really after that, you guys are doing big ticket things. You're buying a lot of property. Those deals, people feel like those deals are secret too long, but they cannot really be conducted in a transparent way, or the city will get screwed.
Well, yeah.
So, and to try and make that, and the other advantage we had was that we had 2 local papers,
right,
that were delivered to your house. Inside Nova and Potomac, those guys are online papers, and they work hard, but they have a lot of ground to cover.
Yes, they do.
They go down all the way down to Spotsylvania. The Journal Messenger was not writing about Spotsylvania.
No, it wasn't.
Neither was the Washington Post. So people were well informed. Now, that occasionally worked to our advantage and occasionally to our disadvantage. Personally, what I did is I started having coffee every Friday morning at Ground Central. And I would just put it on Facebook or wherever the hell it was, and people would show up.
Right.
Just whoever wants to come. And the other thing I did is I spent a lot of time writing a blog, trying to explain to people like why the city is doing A, B, and C.
Yeah.
That was occasionally successful. A lot of people read it. But it was only occasionally successful in trying to dent that anger that you were talking about. So those were the sort of the big differences. Just as a practical matter, after the Great Recession, we didn't have any money to do anything with.
Right.
We couldn't have bought Marsteller or any of this other stuff. It wasn't happening.
Oh, sure.
So I think that's why you guys have been blessed, right? We talked about presidents, the success or failure of a presidency is sometimes not even in the president's hands.
Right.
And we talked about Hoover, right?
Yeah.
I think to some extent there's some of that there. You guys are fortunate. You have, revenue. You can afford to buy things. You got grants from the government for COVID or whatever. You had money to deal with. So, you went and did big ticket things. Right. And people don't like it, or people like it, or whatever. The people that don't like it are the ones who show up.
well, I get that. I liken it to, remember the days when you were at you'd stay overnight at a hotel, and they had that little card, the rating card, and they asked you to leave any comments.
Yeah.
And I remember, as I said, as an association person, I got interacted with hotel salespeople. I remember asking them. I said, so, do you get any compliments on the cards? And they said, rarely.
Yeah. Because
the card was designed to be used to find out where they're not doing well, or where the problems are, and so forth on that. And they recognize. So there was that expectation. Well, to what you're talking about there, for me, it's not that I don't mind being criticized, because no matter what you do, when you make a decision or you have a position, and you're not going to make everyone happy, and you recognize that, especially when you're elected or even appointed to positions here. My concern is how do I help people, our residents, understand that this is not personal, and that when decisions are made that are frequently not in the way these folks are looking at, they feel they're not being heard here, and I don't think it's a matter of not being heard. So I was thinking that just this year, we had two issues that came up, and I was thinking about sort of I'll call it the lobbying effort that went with it. So earlier this year, we revisited, because we got a petition with a lot of signatures to allow chickens in backyards. Again, it was one of the first issues I dealt with when I first got elected in 2021.
Couldn't have picked that up.
No, that's right. That was not on my bingo card then, nor did I think it was going to come back. And the folks, did the petition. They were persistent. They worked with staff. They kept making they made their voices known on social media and tried to generate interest along the way here. But to me, the most important part, which wasn't necessarily seen by everybody, but was that the proponents of this, the main proponents, they were reaching out and calling city councilors or emailing and saying, "I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to know where you are. What are your thoughts? If you're not in favor, making it almost neutral, like, if you're not in favor, may we talk? I'd like to know why. And if you are in favor, may I find out?" Now, ultimately, it wasn't a successful effort, but they got one more vote. The first time it passed, I don't think they got, there were any city councilors in favor. This time they got two that were willing to consider chickens in backyards here. So, from that standpoint. And then very recently, we had the battery storage system, the best system there.
Right.
And there was another grassroots, it was being considered there. And you had residents, particularly the affected residents, who did their research, called around, sat down with staff, sat down with the fire marshal, talked to the city manager, talked with us, and spent time explaining what their concerns were.
Right.
In return, as a member of city council, you're not the expert on everything. You do rely on staff to give you information along the way. So you're asking staff, are these things true, or and so forth and so on. And as we saw in that result, a lot of it done behind the scenes was successful. City council opted to not continue with the battery storage system, especially at that Church Street location. So, to me, those are ways that our residents got involved.
Sure.
By information gathering, by reaching out, by, I won't say lobbying, but I guess that's what it was, where you're busy talking back and forth and saying, I'm sharing. Sometimes some of the folks were a little impassioned along the way on both issues there, and I get it. You're talking about their house.
That's right.
What's going on behind their house there.
How does this impact my family, my house value?
Exactly.
All that stuff. Sure. I saw it online. I wasn't really read into the particulars very much. That kind of thing. I did remind one of the folks on the battery system. I said, I cannot think of anybody on city council that would deliberately vote for or knowingly vote for something that would harm someone's, property or, house and so forth and so on. But it is, sort of trying to figure out bigger picture sorts of things along the way here. Yeah. I kind of got in hot water over the chicken thing.
Did you? How so?
I don't support it at all. and here's the reason why. I really don't care if people have chickens in their backyard. The problem is enforcement.
Yeah.
The city that municipal enforcement, it's a nightmare. It's always been a nightmare. Yeah. And, I can see, because like chickens, they're not the most pleasant smelling
Nope.
critters on, God's green earth. And that was my concern. And then people are like, well, we can hold the city to account. I mean, depending on how many chickens you're talking about, that could be a full-time job.
It could be,
But I mean, that's a tough issue. It's a very niche issue, but it's tough.
Maybe we could get KFC or Chick-fil-A to sponsor the chicken
Staff.
inspector there, who want a little car and have a little chicken head on it, riding around doing enforcement, like we have the parking enforcement.
Right.
If that happened there.
My neighbors used to keep 2 or 3 different kinds of birds, like back in the 80s. I wasn't living in that house in the 80s, but they quail and chickens and a couple other.
Really?
I think that's what it was. Yeah. And they're like, oh, they never caused any trouble. I'm like, well, that's great, but I think that people are maybe a little less thoughtful about their neighbors occasionally.
Well,
there's a lot more people too.
That's true, and I know that I'm sure Chief Keene would just go and hold his head, going, "You want me to do now? What more?"
Right.
Yeah, and you don't want to give me any more officers or what have you to do, on stuff of that sort. Well, I mention this only because to those who might listen along the way here, is that I think everybody, even when you were on city council, wants to hear from our residents here and so forth. And I will say it does pain me when I have, residents who feel and actually say, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to us.
Yeah.
Along the way. And it is, but I think in a lot of ways, most residents also know that, when they have an election, they're choosing the makeup of that council for the next, 4 years. And I know we stagger the terms, but,
right.
but 3 new people can definitely influence, if that's what happened, along the way here and the outlook. So I don't think it should be of any surprise. But as you say, going back to some of these big ticket items, I do think there is probably 2 schools of thought on it. One is, should we leave decisions to the private sector exclusively for, let's just use Old Town Inn as the example. Should we have left it to the private sector to determine what was going to go there, recognizing that the zoning for that was allowed a hotel, but also allowed other uses along the way here. Wasn't it just exclusively a hotel?
Right.
Or is it better to be masters of our own fate? And I understand about the money being paid, being spent, I should say, to do these sorts of things here.
I mean, the Old Town Inn, you had to buy that guy's business.
Yeah.
Not just the dirt. You had to buy the business.
Right.
And that's expensive.
Well, it was a going business, and it was making money. That was you say what you will, it was making money, and so that is the case there along the way here on that sort of thing. So I what gets lost sometimes when we, because you're up on the dais and people come and talk and you have public hearings and discussions and so forth. What gets lost is that what would be ideal is to be able to at least talk through some of these sorts of things here. So I like your idea of doing the coffee thing. One thing I started is back in the summertime. I started what I call neighborhood walks and neighborhood talks.
Yeah, with Jill Spall.
That's right. I bring someone from the school board. She's my partner in crime because if questions come up about the schools, because one of the things I would hear is I don't have time to go to council meetings or school board meetings, and it takes a lot to write an email. you got to be really ticked off, or, the phone call, that sort of thing. And even phone calls, you can play phone tag for a while and stuff like that. And so I really wanted to go into communities and be able to just knock on doors and say, listen, talk to people on their turf. And I do ask people directly after I introduce myself and we chat a little bit. I said, what would you improve here? What do you want to change? And it's surprising, and now, surprising that most folks are pretty happy with the city. I mean, what I get mostly are what I call quality of life issues here.
Sure.
The annoyances of life. I don't think I've had anybody tell me, boy, you were stupid to buy the Old Town Inn, or commercial air service. That's the dumbest idea I ever heard going on at the airport. I don't hear about those kinds of things when I go door to door and talk to people. And I think also for Jill, as well as for me, because I listen in when they talk about the schools. And if they have kids, especially, she interacts to find out what their level of approval is of the schools and what have you there. And generally, it's very, very good here. Every parent is involved to a certain degree in different levels from family to family in the schools, but nonetheless, nothing that I could walk back and go, oh my gosh, we are, to my fellow counselors, we are in deep doo-doo right now because these people are just all mad about whatever.
Right.
On that kind of thing here. So going to do one in October, going to do Clover Hill Road and do a portion. You never get, we did Weems, we did a portion of Weems. We'll go back, along the way, but on that sort of thing. The other thing is that I think what hasn't been noticed by our residents much, well, it individually it has, but overall noted. And by that, I mean on social media. And that is because that, I guess, becomes where you can get some temperature, a feeling of what's going on, is that the city and city staff in particular are working very hard over the last year or so, to work on what I call quality of life issues here. All of us, I'm sure when you were in council, you got, all sorts of comments there, just the trash, the noise, the grass, the dog barking, the party, what have you, the loud cars, things of this sort. And so the city's gotten better over the last year about addressing these and doing that sort of thing. And I've tried to make it my goal that as I go out and I see stuff, or people tell me about it, to share it. And I'll give you a couple of small examples. I had some friends. So Dean Park got, with the ball fields, got all fixed up. And then we had a grand opening for that back earlier this year. And they had planted a whole bunch of trees. We are doing our part for tree canopy along the way here and in the region. And several of the trees had lost, the stakes had toppled over and they were leaning and so forth.
Right.
And these particular residents said they had called staff about it, but nothing had happened. And so they mentioned it to me. And so I passed it on. And within a day or two, the trees were fixed, straightened, put in place.
Right.
Just like that. Another one is over at the corner of Grant and Wellington, where the Exxon station is. Right across, there's a nice park bench that was donated, I believe, by the Lions. It's concrete and wood, and you could sit. And during the streetscape, it had been set aside, and so it was sitting on the ground, but the ground was kind of unlevel there, and you couldn't really sit in the thing. And someone made a mention on that on some post I had made about something in the city and passing that on. And so I passed it on to the city, and lo and behold, within a couple of days, they had come out, leveled the ground, made a little concrete mat for it, and put it there all nice and neat, just like that.
Well, that's good.
Along the way. And so it's these kinds of things. I know we had some people along Main Street down there in front of Baldwin and the high school worried about the kids crossing over.
Yeah.
And so they finally have put up the city, because I know these residents have been asking longer than it, for many years, a speed radar that shows what your speed is along the way to try to get people to slow down, but to do those pedestrian crosswalks that has the little refuge island in the middle there. We had one there, and I'm told it got removed because they're doing have to do utility work related to the Ashbury subdivision that's going in right now down Main Street. But it's supposed to return. But these are all little things, but they all make it safer. But more importantly, they address just a few people's concerns here, but for safety along the way here.
I don't recall when I was on council getting a lot of those. We got a lot of static about overcrowding.
Oh yeah,
and that was. I mean, we set up a proactive enforcement unit to go around the city and look for problems. It wasn't just overcrowding, but I don't know if they still do that. I seriously doubt it, because we did have to settle the council a couple of months, I think, before I was elected. They passed that redefinition of the family,
right? And
they got sued, and then I was elected. So
you had to deal with the next part. Yep.
Yeah, that was a headache.
Right.
But overcrowding then was driving electoral outcomes.
Yes.
People were sick of it. The council tried a couple of things, but I feel like they needed to look at. It was time to start looking at big city solutions. Parking districts and stuff like this.
Right.
Instead of trying to deal with it, chasing the wheelbarrow going down the hill.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it didn't matter because we got sued and then we had to settle it.
So part of that settlement was that the city had to establish a system now for dealing with, I won't call it overcrowding, but now, which the city has still kept in place, where if someone has a concern about, we'll call it overcrowding, there's a form online you fill out, and that, as opposed to the city being the one having the initiative going and visiting homes, they would respond to. If you see 10 cars parked at somebody's house and you file that complaint, then the city can act upon it and go along the way. Though there are things clearly that the code department can go around and if they happen to see. And that's one of the things where I think city staff is getting better to be more attuned, that if we're reactive, we'll constantly have residents who feel, well, what am I paying my taxes for? What am I getting?
Yeah.
And what they're looking for is a government that is looking for those opportunities for improvement. So, and so, lots of little things that are there that I don't necessarily, in the big picture, maybe are not ones that you go and campaign on. But for instance, you can get a second trash cart for free. You can get a second recycling cart for free. All you have to do is call the recycling and refuge coordinator and get that. Those are simple matters. If you've got too much garbage or so much recycling going out all the time, we're going to make it easy for you to do these sorts of things, which I think we should be doing on that sort of thing. So one of the things in the neighborhood walks and talks was in the summertime I was visiting, and this was down at one end of Waterford, not as traveled as much as, let's say, other streets are. And the resident pointed out, says, it concerns me to see this grass that's growing up between the asphalt and the concrete gutter along the way. Well, I did press him a little hard to say, give me something, there's got to be something we can improve here or whatnot. Any point. So I took that and I shared that with city staff. Next thing I know is Public Works had a couple of young guys, and they were using those. We're a railroad town.
Yeah.
That's for sure. in one of those gators driving around there. One was driving and the other one was basically spraying.
Yeah.
And they just had a grid that they were just working around to try to do that. You know, I made a point of sharing that kind of information because, again, a lot of times we don't see our city, working on these kinds of things along the way here.
Yeah.
Now, some things obviously take more time. Excuse me. Complaints about loud cars.
That's got to be tough to pin down.
And, there have been some residents that say we should have noise monitors of some kind along the way here to do that. But to get that, the chief tells us we need to have legislation to handle that. So, but I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know how much you got trash complaints or stuff like that.
And one of the angriest meetings I ever went to was a meeting where the city council was going to consider changing trash collection days or something. I would never have guessed that people were that attached to their trash collection day.
Right.
But I mean, there were people shouting at the city council, and we were considering like moving pickups for townhouses from twice a week to once a week or something. I don't remember what it was exactly, but it seemed like half the city was there and they were mad. And it didn't take long for the mayor to say, all right, look, this is clearly not a thing we're going to do. Right. So, and it never came back up.
There you go. But that kind of touches upon something that I have observed that may lead to frustration from residents, is that they feel that there's not, whatever the word, from them, how they would define adequate notice of something coming up.
That's got to be a struggle, because I don't see. I think I follow the city on Facebook. Those notices don't come into my feed, and whether that's Facebook's algorithm, I don't know what the hell it is, and I only find out about a lot of these things from different Facebook groups, like the battery thing.
Right. Right.
I saw a long write up by somebody, and one of those who clearly was vested in the issue, and I don't know. You can maybe use an email service. I don't know. But since the newspapers have gone away, it's hard to consistently notice the public when that stuff goes on.
Well, that's the thing. So, using your recollection of changing trash day, that just came up in the natural order of stuff. There, what I think residents don't fully understand, and nor would I expect them to, because
Right.
that's not their job here.
Right.
But staff is working on things, and the city manager is basically the traffic cop in terms of deciding when things come up and what order. And he meets with his staff, and there are all sorts of things. And some spring up all of a sudden, some are ongoing, and they're kind of got their moment where the BESS system, the battery storage system, there was, a deadline. Some of the electric credits were going to disappear at the end of the federal government's fiscal year. So that I'm sure that part of that was driving some of this coming along. But so there are times I will admit that even I come in and talk to the city manager and say, so when are we going to talk about? And he'll look at his schedule and he'll let me know. Number one, if it's already on there.
Right.
Just because it's on there doesn't mean it's ready for prime time. Meaning you could share an ordinance. And, sometimes sort of like, the proposal for that we received, the unsolicited proposal for Old Town Inn,
Right.
And Mifco and the parking garage, those things. You have no idea until, staff is talking to these people probably, but they're not running to us on council, let alone residents, and say, hey, everybody, guess what? Somebody just talked to, they've got to vet it. They got to see how serious they are. Are they ready to put something in writing? City attorney's got to sit down and say, this is the process we're going to be using, and this is what we've got to follow along the way here, in that. So I'm sure that contributes to folks feeling like sometimes they're, I don't want to say blindsided, but surprised that something comes up.
Yeah.
So how we solve that, I don't know. You can get the notices, you can sign up to get the agendas.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I was pleased to have done. My first 4 years, I think I spent more time on process issues. So one of the first things I did when I got on council, I never felt that getting the agendas or let's say by Thursday for a Monday meeting was enough time to do things, because you had a weekend, but that didn't mean staff was around along the way here. So I was able to get a full week. It would come out like Tuesday, Wednesday at the very latest of the for a Monday meeting. And, if it was a Wednesday meeting, so forth and so on, it would come out in enough time to do that sort of thing. And then working toward getting our meetings recorded. That was a slog, and that didn't happen in the first year, 2 years, 3 years, and finding a way to do that instead of counting on Comcast or Verizon to do a very good job in that regard here. And I think now to have the broadcast and recorded now, so folks can see that.
Right.
Even our work sessions. To have that, because you remember the work sessions were on the second floor, weren't they? Second floor conference room in City Hall.
Yep, there was nothing there. They had a TV on the wall. That was about it.
Yeah, it was pretty rough in comparison to now. In those sorts of things. Those are being samples of trying to get folks a chance to see stuff. What I've learned, however, is all I did was, it seems, and I say this jokingly somewhat, but I do kind of feel this way, is that all I did was remove the criticism of, you're not recording, you're not broadcasting, you're not giving enough adequate notice with agendas at this point. Because I still have people telling me, well, I didn't know, I didn't see, I haven't heard, all along the way here. We even record our retreats now.
Really?
And as you know, when you go different places, that's kind of tricky there. But the retreats to me, I'm glad we do. That was something I also wanted, but the retreats are a great source. I mean, they basically lay out things that are coming up for that whole year there. If people listened, and this is a plug, go back and listen to our retreat recording back in late January of this year, you'll see we talked about plans for like the old police station. We didn't hide it, and even if we had been in a retreat in a location in Manassas, I'm not sure that anybody would have paid attention to it. It's just, it's one of those things. But a lot of these things do get talked. But I understand how people can feel like they don't know what's going on, or they feel like these things just pop up along the way here. And I'm not sure. Do you say, all right, in 2 months' time, I'm going to talk about...
I mean, it's tough, right? It's not easy. And some of the nature of the real estate deals, I mean, those are not things that you can run out into public, most of them.
Right.
And talk about it.
Right.
Those are privileged. The lawyers have got to be involved, and you're talking about fantastic sums of money. So, it's got to be treated appropriately, even if it's kind of frustrating for, the public. We certainly had that same sort of thing happen, where people are like, all these deals are secret, or you guys are just lining your pockets. I still want to know where the money was to line my pockets with because I never saw it.
I know what you mean. I'll see on social media here that they'll say those data centers are just paying off all those city councilors, for instance. And as you know, having run yourself, it's all public. How much money you got, who donated the money. You have to account for all this, how you spent the money, and so on. And I too have often wondered where is all this extra money here
I never
on stuff. But recognizing that that's the part of social media. If we want to get into that, where it just doesn't. That's the part of social media that's not very helpful here, because anybody can say anything, and there doesn't have to be an iota of truth behind any of those kinds of things there. And so,
I mean, I understand when people are passionate about those things because something the city is doing is impacting their life somehow, right? And those guys, I largely just kind of take at face value, and I understand that, it's a big investment owning a home, and you don't want the city doing something to screw it up. I do think the city has handled the data center situation, with the possible exception of that damn bank.
Yes. Yes.
Way better than the county. The county has got data centers next to subdivisions.
Right.
And,
right.
The city, now admittedly, the city doesn't have a lot of dirt to build data centers, but it seems like it's mostly pretty heavily commercial areas. It's hard to argue against the data center across the street from Micron.
There you go. You're right. You're right there on those sorts of things here. And you're right. You're right out in the county there, and it's sad to see some of this, how they're being built right up next to the road there along the way here. But
those things are a blight, man.
But going back to what you were saying when you were on council, and then the Great Recession hit there, and you didn't have the luxury of being able to spend money. You were trying to keep what money you could get, and stretch it as far as you can, and decide. I mean, you probably came up with new definitions of essential services, right? Along the way. I mean, is this essential?
Yeah.
You really need these pencils? Come on now. What's the matter with the old ones? I just
came to that, man.
On that. But I will say, I will admit that I feel very fortunate. I know I'm fortunate to be on council during a time where there are those opportunities in front of me. But many of those opportunities are because of decisions that were made ahead of time, before me, along the way, or set things up, cue things up, Occasionally I remind folks that, Lake Manassas didn't always exist.
Right.
And I guarantee you the folks who set up Lake Manassas at no time thought, if we do Lake Manassas, we're going to have a chip manufacturing company here. And then we're going to have data centers. Woo! How about that? Because those industries didn't exist.
No.
Or at least as we know them today there. But likewise, the Harris Pavilion. Yeah. What a cultural gathering place that has become. I mean, that thing has paid for itself. I don't know how many times over it.
A lot.
When it brings in the stuff, the things that happen.
That was an HMI plan.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
No.
I have the original planning document that HMI provided to the city council to get the dialogue started.
Well, there you go. See?
And HMI's role, it's fluid, right? Some periods of time, they do stuff like that, which was, at the time, the Paris Pavilion idea, it was out there, because there was nothing in that general vicinity that said this is a good place for this.
Right.
Now it's turned out to be pretty good idea.
Right.
But there really wasn't, and I felt like that project made it a lot easier for the rest of the projects in Old Town. because it was successful.
Well, exactly, and it became a catalyst. And then, the things that you did to close down Bower Street.
Yeah.
I forget the gentleman's name who ran the dry cleaners. Do you remember him?
Mr. Roy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I would take my dry cleaning over there, and I'd get an earful. Oh.
I never would have thought that widening sidewalks would cause such anger. And, people said that we should call it Hair Over Boulevard. And, you're just doing this for your fancy friends. I'm like, well, who are you talking to here?
Exactly. There.
Because it was painful for some of those businesses because, they didn't really have any sidewalks for a period of time there.
Right.
And they did a bunch of utility work. But I think you could argue that's been pretty successful. Yeah.
Well, yes. And because you look, if you told people that, we're going to go back to the way it was and there's not going to be any nightlife here or there's going to be a vibrant, weekend activities and stuff like that. And even it's, the places, the shops and everything of that sort here along the way here.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. Same thing with the art factory, what was Candy Factory at the time, should we have left for a private developer to decide what went there, or was it a better decision to accept it as the gift that it came from the merchants there to be an art center there?
Yeah.
And, nowadays we look at it and these are all integral pieces that kind of flow together.
Yeah.
So it's my hope that, even with Mathis Avenue, and I'm not going to be around to see the final result of how that plays out.
No.
But being at least a catalyst where starting that process, where it can be the next stage of Manassas economic growth as well as housing and just a renaissance there along the way here. Because ultimately the way we do redevelopment in Manassas is we tear something down and put something new in place.
That's all we can do.
For the most part there, and it has to be updated. The shopping center was built for a whole different time that doesn't really fit anymore.
Yeah, someone just walked by that window. That's the one that I don't really love. I understand, trust me, I understand the considerations and we need to control what goes in there. Because I made that same argument when we bought the DMV building years ago. And I thought that was the best course. That one, I just feel like it's a lot. But the rest of them, like Marsteller, when the city gets involved in Marsteller, it always makes me smile because when we had that huge snowstorm, because we wanted to buy Marsteller and use it as a city school. And the school board always told us, it's too dangerous, won't work. You can't have people in there.
Right.
The school over there.
Mayfield.
Yeah. We got the big snowstorm, the roof collapsed. Within 2 weeks, we have children going to Marsteller.
Yeah, we do.
And I know it was, look, it's a crisis. But, I think that the decision the city was faced with there is either was probably a bunch of houses.
Right.
If that property was sold. Now, I don't know with that Wawa there, if that still would have been attractive. I don't know. But, it was not going to be green fields.
That is true.
It's too valuable.
Yeah.
I could see 1 million townhouses going in there because that's the most profitable thing.
Well, yeah, exactly there. And we did need, again, this is work that was done behind the scenes. This is back when Pat Pate was our city manager about replacing Station 1. And, once Station 21 was built on the southern end of our city there, and that's
Central Prince William County.
And that's the story of itself to tell if you want in a moment here. That it almost became either logical or necessary that when Station 1 was moved, that it would have to be at the other end, the northern end, so to speak. And the idea is instead of being in the center moving out, you're going to be at either end moving in to cover the city at this point here. That it wasn't working really well to have one in the middle of the city, Station 1, and having 21 where it was. The workload wasn't the same in that regard. But there's an example of Station 21 where residents spoke up and got involved, and the city had to respond appropriately and decide. Sometimes, so was it the best decision? Who knows? But we've made the best of the decision, moving ahead now.
Right.
And so things have moved a lot. But that where 21 is now ultimately is leading to where Station 1 is going next to Marsteller because of that sort of thinking.
Yeah.
With Manassas Avenue Shopping Center, you know what sold me on voting for that? Because the first time I heard about that, I told Mark Wolf, I said, no way, no how. I can't imagine spending this kind of money. What are you doing? And I know there'll be people out there saying, what? Osina is voting against something, would not be in favor of spending money or what have you there. But that's okay. And he talked. And he shared with me, and Steve Hirsch was the one who actually got me a copy of the old sector plan done back there in 2005, was it?
Yeah, that was right before my time, I think.
And looking at, now, of course, that included, the focus there was mostly on Centerville Road, but it included Mathis, the whole area there, but it really did get into, it showed a vision. I mean, they had the drawings of the mixed use.
I remember.
And then, the Urban Land Institute, like 2011, talked about Old Town's economics are going to be dependent upon Mathis Avenue there and things of this sort. So it gave me the opportunity, or forced me to look at this very differently, that it isn't necessarily dollars and cents here. Now, is it going to be the catalyst that we hope it will be? Well, over time, I think it will be, just like building the pavilion. Things didn't change right away when the pavilion was built. I mean, you still had Old Town rolling up its sidewalks at 5 o'clock, right?
Absolutely.
For several years and what have you.
Is there still going to be a mosque in the middle of that strip there?
I believe so. I believe that stays, and because I do think that I don't think we own that, to be quite honest.
No, I don't think you do.
On that, and then of course the what is it? The O'Reilly's Auto Parts is built upon the last big redoubt, Confederate redoubt there, that got plowed under in 1958 or something like that. When you start doing all this research, this history there.
Yeah. Well, when I first saw that sector plan, I thought it was an interesting idea. I just don't know how you make the infrastructure work.
Right.
The roads, and where is the parking going to be? Because you can't underground that much parking in the city. It's too expensive. Well, I guess you could, but it's going to cost a lot.
Right.
Because the rock is not very far under.
That is correct.
So I looked at it and I thought, you guys, it's a cool idea, right? But you're out of your minds, because I was talking to staff, not you. but where are all of these people going to go?
Yeah.
And they said, well, don't get too hung up on the details. It's an idea. And I said, well, okay. It's like when we had a deal with the Lerner family for all of that property out there by the airport. And I'll tell you, that was something else. I mean, they were talking about like 7- and 8-story office buildings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
And the Great Recession killed that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you meet with those guys and you meet with all their land planners. I mean, they're pros.
Sure.
They know they understand exactly, like, this gets built first. That's all surface parking. And then we put in this, and then we have to build a parking garage. And then we put in this, and we put in a parking garage over here.
Right.
And, it's exactly what it is. That was a super interesting idea. And those guys had enough money to just build it.
Oh, I bet. Along the way here. So you mentioned how it'll look. So on October the 14th, that's a Tuesday, I believe at 6 o'clock, that there will be a joint meeting between City Council and the Economic Development Authority, at which time the consultant that was hired to run the 2 community conversations is putting all the data together and is come up with some ideas or suggested thoughts about what seemed to get the most approval,
Right.
and what that might look like. It is not a final plan. It is the beginning of
It's an idea.
That's right. It is your cocktail napkin. This is what we do with Battle Street.
Right. Right.
This is the sort of thing, and we're going to talk back and forth and kind of say, like this, didn't like that. Why? I wanted more, let's say, attainable housing. I wanted more this. Why aren't there? That sort of thing. I went to 2 of those, both of the conversations, and they both emphasis was very much on, the mixed retail and so forth. Though you have to wonder nowadays how much retail you really got to get this day. But they wanted green space there, and so they wanted the ability to make it a place to walk and be able to have a family, or which that place, that neighborhood really does need something of that sort, because we are lacking that kind of thing. And I think some of the thoughts might be, and I haven't seen the plan, so I can't say, is taking, how the shopping center really blocks the Portner and the cross streets that come into Portner from the Weems area there to coming over to Centerville or to Mathis, is to open that up a bit and to create some through streets there, with the idea of breaking up that big space there.
Right.
And then, there's still the matter of timing. Ground's not going to be broken for years, because there's still some long-term leases, especially with the grocery store. But this is and what I left out was, so after our meeting on the 14th, the EDA is going to have 2 more community conversations now based on this plan. They're going to do one in November and I believe one in January. Mm-hmm. Again, the idea is, okay, you're not going to get that in-ground swimming pool.
Right.
That sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
All right. But, these are the things that you said you thought you wanted. Let's share. Let's see what's going on. My biggest worry, I guess, out of all of these things is, when you do this sort of thing, are things we can't control, and that's the economy.
Yeah.
It took us this long to get a bid on, when I say bid, a proposal for the hotel, because of interest rates and because of the way the economy was. I mean, this idea that, and I had to learn this even on council, developers don't come in and they got this big wad of money and what have you. They're borrowing the money. They're using someone else's money to do these things.
That's right.
And so when they are planning all of this, yes, they're making money. They want to make money if they do it right and so forth, but they got to figure out, how are they going to pay back the bank, the lending institution, for the money? And they're only, certain, they can only go so high on what the percentage is. And so if our economy recession comes, God forbid, but, even if interest rates go back up or things of that sort, who knows what will happen along the way. So
yeah, timing is everything. And, when I was on council and we had that deal with the learners, there was a sense of urgency, because we bought this land 25 years ago and we've not done a damn thing with it. We need to, get something going so that the citizens get a return on their investment. And that was the learner deal ultimately.
Right.
And then, the Great Recession happens, and, all development projects basically just stopped.
That's right. They did.
So yeah, timing is everything. It seems like, it seems like the economy's struggling a bit right now, and I hope that doesn't go bad, but it certainly could.
Well, you have to put that out there because this isn't I told you so. Why that it's not possible to do these things. It's the conditions have to be right. You have to have certain things going on, and I don't control the economy. You don't, and we can only hope that our leaders in Washington, but even international events can
Sure.
skew things. Could send energy prices up all of a sudden because something that goes on. As an example,
it's a real wild card, and right now, it seems like the economy was doing pretty good when Trump came into office, and seems like it's sagged a bit. Fed's cutting interest rates. I don't know. We'll see. I certainly can't predict any of that.
No.
But what do you think? One last question.
Sure.
What do you think about, have you guys, I know that the state has done some planning about the federal job cuts. Are you guys listening in on that?
Oh, yes. I think the proof's going to be in the next few days.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, so we get a report, on unemployment claims and job cuts and that sort of thing that is shared. Did you have the Friday update? Do you have that?
No.
So every Friday we get a report from the city manager who shares different things that are going on.
I got it's like a memo from him.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That sort of stuff. So that's where that shows up, and we'll get that. We don't get it every week, but along the way. But as we know, with the start of the fiscal year, and if the government closes down for any length of time, and does the president follow through on his threat to start firing federal employees, there's a case where we could have some serious repercussions along the way here.
I mean, federal employment's a big deal for us. It is. Man. I don't feel like any of the other bigger cities in Virginia are going to feel nearly as much. Like Hampton and Newport News, those are all military, I think, primarily. Up here is the administrative side.
Yes, exactly.
So
we'll see how it goes. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I do appreciate us, catching up on some things here. I hope those who listen pick up some dates there. More importantly, I hope they can appreciate that. Don't mind the criticism. I actually really do, sense that it can be very frustrating when council doesn't vote the way you want it to do all the time here. But it's nothing personal. It is the way we're looking at the various issues. But giving those two examples of groups that did successfully, one successfully and one not so successfully, at least behind the scenes did some work to try to change minds or get what they wanted. I think is the way that really, especially in local government, we can make the difference.
Yeah. But I mean, thanks for all you do, Tom. I appreciate you making the time to come on, and I enjoyed it. Had a good time.
Me too. This was good.
Thank you.